More camp notes from San Francisco 49ers training camp. Brandon Aiyuk's embrace midfield with his GM and head coach. A lot of waves were made by this handshake. We have a DAP expert right here on our panel, Eric Crocker, to break it all down for us. Who shined at practice and a deep group of cornerbacks. What one of them said about one of their coaches on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we always appreciate it when you hit that subscribe button on YouTube and wherever you listen to this podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. All right, Croc, we've been asked about this a lot. It's been making waves out there. We know that Brandon Aiyuk's been holding in. We've seen practices where Brandon Aiyuk was sitting back with John Lynch and actually watching practice. Today, Brandon Aiyuk made his way to midfield, and it looked like John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were actually playing catch together. And Brandon Aiyuk walked up, nice little handshake, said what's up to John Lynch, and then Kyle Shanahan came over and kind of gave him a big embrace, dapped him up, handshake, chest to chest, a little hug, all in one, the classic move. If you've not seen the video, you can go find it. I saw that video, and I saw, Brandon Aiyuk still holding in. He's at practice. That's all I thought about it. And on my timeline, Croc, was just a stream of, oh, they got a deal done. That's a congratulatory handshake, no doubt about it. Oh, man, he's just been traded. That is a goodbye handshake if I've ever seen one. And it's comical, first of all, that everyone's making a huge deal about this. Did you have an immediate reaction when you saw that handshake that you thought it meant something big and that maybe something was imminent for Brandon Aiyuk, whether it's a new contract or maybe a trade out of town?
First of all, shout out to my guy Brad Graham, man. He's all over it with all the little nuance inside scoops of what's going on at training camp. So if you aren't following him, make sure you follow him on his personal page. He has the SF 49ers. He does a terrific job bringing 49er fans content. But he got that video, and I saw it on Pat McAfee's show. It's kind of all over. Now, where I saw it first, my group chat with my buddies. You know what I'm saying? Got the Cowboy fans in there, got Bills fans in there. And got some 49er fans in there as well. And one of my buddies said, look at this. So I think as guys that probably call ourselves handshake specialists or DAP specialists, I think he's reading a little too much into it as well. This is what I saw. And this was my initial reaction in the text message group chat. I said, the John Lynch handshake, that one looked kind of like, hey, are you like?
It's good to see you again today, like I saw you yesterday.
Yeah.
You
know what I'm saying? It was like, oh, hey, what's up? Like, it was kind of like a little awkward a little bit at first. Like, and really, when you watch it back, because I watched it a few times, Aiyuk walked from far away. So maybe he had like a one. Can we talk about his walk? I think that was a bigger deal than the handshakes. He had like this weird cockeyed, like kind of leaning one way and one arm really swinging and the other one wasn't swinging. Like he had his left arm in a cast or something and his right arm was really swinging. Like there was some intent behind the walk. If I can make any big deal about that scene and that video, again, shout out Brad Graham, the SF Niners. It was the walk, the Aiyuk walk. He's got these long arms too. And like he's got a hood on his head. Like, it's Brandon Aiyuk. Nobody's shaped like Brandon Aiyuk on the 49ers. He's a unique guy because of how he's a slim guy, but he's strong, broad shoulders, super long arms. And it's like, oh, well, that's Brandon Aiyuk right there. But he was walking kind of cockeyed. That must be his little pimp strut, as Dr. Steve Brule says in the chat. And so the initial one with John Lynch, it was almost like John Lynch was like, oh, hey, Aiyuk, and like, all right, bring it in here, a little awkward of a handshake. The handshake between Aiyuk and Shanahan, that was definitely much more natural, not forced. it really looked like a player seeing his guy, you know, and Kyle talks about how he has relationships with all these guys. And it felt like that was like, man, what's up, man? It's good to see you out here, right? But I don't know if I got the vibes of, oh, he's about to sign a contract. Because I think if that was so, I felt like I would have felt more of that on Lynch handshake. And this is a deep dive. I think it was.
You're breaking up on Croc on me. I don't know if I'm breaking up for you, you're breaking up for me, but I will add to what I thought of it. And someone's in the chat trying to say that there's something breaking right now. I don't know if there is. It might be my connection actually that's going slow all of a sudden. But when I saw
it's mine.
Okay, there we go. You're back. Now I hear you a little bit. This is what I saw from it. If you told me this handshake, first of all, my initial thought when I saw it was like, they're shaking hands, whatever, they're hanging out. If you told me this handshake for sure meant something and it's one way or the other, to me it looked way more congratulatory, especially with Kyle Shanahan. And it was like John Lynch already knew and had already talked to Aiyuk about it. And they're like, oh, hey, what's up? They hang out midfield. And then when Kyle Shanahan makes a beeline over to give him a huge handshake and a hug, it looked like, yes, it looks like we finally got this thing done. Let's ink it. We're going to announce it in the morning. So if I thought something was coming, I think it was way more congratulatory than the other way. I'm a little bit surprised. And I guess it's sort of a Rorschach test. And to be honest, sometimes I'm more pessimistic in life than optimistic. But this to me looked more like, yeah, they're getting a deal done. If you told me this handshake meant anything, and I would lean toward the handshake didn't really mean anything at all, but it looked way more like a congratulatory handshake from Kyle Shanahan than a goodbye handshake from Kyle Shanahan. And here's the other part of it. If it was a goodbye handshake, we would already know a deal was done because that would have already been leaked and he'd be on a plane out of there and he'd be on his way somewhere right now. If a deal was mostly agreed to and then they're still hammering out the final details, but most of the contract had kind of been figured out and agreed upon and they know what the main numbers are, then that's something that we might not hear about yet. And we'll hear about it tomorrow and then it'll be done. And maybe that'll go a little bit slower. So I would say I would lean toward for sure Brandon Aiyuk is not traded. If anything, they've got most of a contract agreed to. But to be honest with you right now, I don't know if it's any of those things because I'm not looking too much into it. It's a fun conversation here as we sit on the last day of July, the first day of August, for those of you waking up in the morning and listening to this podcast. And who knows, maybe there'll be some big news for you in that regard in the morning. But to me, if anything, it looked much more congratulatory than goodbye from that embrace midfield. But I am not a DAP expert. And Croc was breaking up there when he was talking about it. So let's see if he jumps back in on us in a minute. And we've got more notes here to go over on today's Locked On 49ers, talking about Ricky Pearsall, who seems to be ramping up now after multiple days of being back and kind of starting slow as he jumped in when pads went on, and now the 49ers get another day off. Deommodore Lenoir had an unbelievable quote about one of the 49ers' new coaches, Brandon Staley, that I think is fascinating. Demo's having a great camp. Demo's already a phenomenal player. He's in a contract year himself, and the 49ers deep cornerback group. I want to talk more about that with Eric Crocker and everybody in the chat as well next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. We're talking killer last-minute deals on Major League Baseball games, NFL games, any sports you want to go see, any concerts, comedy shows near you, theater events, you name it, you can find those tickets and great last-minute deals, saving up to 60% off buying last-minute sports, concerts, and comedy tickets near you. All-in pricing, no surprise fees at checkout is maybe my favorite part of Gametime. You get to see the views from your seat, a panoramic view on the app before you buy, so you know exactly what you're getting. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. All you got to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, just go to Gametime, download the app, create an account, and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Peacock, I like this question right here. I think this is a great one in the chat. We got Ebert49 says, you guys think BA gets his new contract before Trent gets his guaranteed money? What are your thoughts on that? Because I think if you had to say who they were going to prioritize, I would go absolutely Trent Williams. And I don't know where they're at with contract negotiations with Brandon Aiyuk. Have they just come to a just sudden halt and it's like, hey, what we have is on the table and that's it, right? But with Trent Williams, I mean, the guy that just got 99 overall on the new Madden game, I feel like that's a guy who really kind of anchors a lot of not just your offensive line, but really your offense in general. You need him out there. You need him on the field. I would assume he has to be priority number one. I assume he's going to get his money before BA. What are your thoughts on that?
By the way, the guys that could potentially be in the lineup instead of Aiyuk and Trent Williams had a pretty good day at practice on Wednesday and haven't had bad practices all week long since the pads went on. We were watching a lot of Pooney at yesterday's practice when we were there, Croc, on Tuesday. I watched a little bit because, of course, it's a huge story, and I wanted to see what Jalen Moore looked like. I want to see what Colton McKivitz looked like, and they looked pretty solid at left and right tackle as well. And apparently, they looked really good on Wednesday, according to reports. So, I want to throw it back to you with the question before I answer which one I think is going to get done first. Who do you think the 49ers are better off playing without? Because I think most people would say Trent Williams is more difficult to play without for the 49ers right now, just because the 49ers just drafted a first-round wide receiver. But maybe the 49ers aren't in terrible hands. Maybe it's something to their whole, like, we're going to just go cheap at offensive line and we're going to find guys and coach them up and they're going to be okay. Because that would tell me who the biggest priority is for the 49ers is the guy that they for sure know they can't play without.
It's one thing when Nick Bosa is in and out of practice and you don't have to go up against him all game at 100% speed. It's a whole nother thing when you're Jalen Moore or even McKivitz and you have to go against a monster edge rusher for an entire game. I don't want to see what that's like on two sides. Matter of fact, I saw some semblance of it went back in 2022. Was it Trey Lance's rookie year? I want to say, or the year he was supposed to take over as starter. So the year Lance got hurt, this would have been 2022. They went into the preseason game against Houston Texans with Jalen Moore and McKivitz starting not tackle spots. That was tragic. It was ugly. I don't want to see Brock Purdy exposed to that. So if you could just kind of slow up the leaks and have Trent Williams on one side, maybe help the other guy a little bit, I definitely prefer that over Aiyuk. Now, obviously, if you get both, then definitely Aiyuk. But if I had to choose between the two, I'm definitely going with Trent Williams.
I think the 49ers need Aiyuk in sooner than Trent just because of the nature of their positions and, being ready and having the timing. And I think Trent can miss every day and jump in. He could jump in later than Bosa did last year and probably be just fine. And I think the reason why I think Trent Williams is the answer is because there's less to go. He's already making $20 million a year. What is he going to make at most? $8 million more per year, right? Brandon Aiyuk's making a bigger, longer contract, so it's just harder to get done. And now they've been working on that contract maybe longer than they have with Trent Williams. And maybe we don't know enough behind the scenes about one of those players. Like maybe they're still working hard on Aiyuk, and there's a line in the sand drawn with Trent Williams. Like maybe Trent was like, "Hey, can we get a re-up here?" And then I was like, "No." And so I was like, "All right, well, I'm going to hold out." And the Niners are like, "All right." And maybe it's just like that's where it's at. So maybe it'll take a while, right? And they're working on Aiyuk. And maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the Aiyuk offer is like, same offer, Brandon. That's it. That's the offer. And now they're like, okay, Trent, let's work on yours now. So maybe they're working on one and not the other. And that information we don't really have. But I would think it's a lot easier just to give, just like they did with Christian McCaffrey, give Trent a little bit more. That should be something they can hammer out in a day if both sides really want to do it and are at the table. Whereas Brandon Aiyuk is obviously a more difficult contract that they haven't been able to figure out for months. So I can't say that they should be able to figure it out tomorrow if they haven't been able to do it all offseason.
I don't think it helps that DJ Moore just got signed. And if my math is correct, when I did it earlier, and if my memory serves me correct, $27.5 million per year.
Yep. The big number on the DJ Moore contract is, so it's 4 years, 110, so $27.5 million per year. Brandon Aiyuk, I think, should get more than DJ Moore, although DJ Moore's had a really good career and has been consistently better than Aiyuk over the last 4 years. But Aiyuk, I think, is currently better and had a better year last year.
Real quick, there's this tweet that's out there. I'm pretty sure it's still out there. I tweeted maybe after DJ Moore's second year or maybe third year, one of those years. And I said, DJ Moore is who the 49ers want Deebo Samuel to be. And then Deebo ended up going off and having that big 1,400-yard season. People was like, oh, you look stupid now, Croc. And then ever since then, DJ Moore has continued to be a very productive receiver. Deebo hasn't quite been that 1,400-yard receiver. But, yeah, DJ Moore, a terrific receiver, targeted a lot. Definitely a guy who's going to help, Caleb Williams.
No matter who his quarterback is, and he's had bad quarterback situations, just consistently good. Kind of like Terry McLaurin, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, but him getting that number, and again, I think he's been, he just has more 1,000-yard seasons than Aiyuk. And again, without having the solid quarterback play, even if you don't like Jimmy Garoppolo, guys were productive with him. The offense was productive with him. DJ Moore hasn't quite had that, even that. So for him to kind of do what he's done, he comes in at $27.5 million. But still, if I'm Aiyuk, that is where I'm really trying to be. I feel like I should be either right around there, maybe even a little bit more than that. I would have to try to argue that.
Ebert49 talks about Moore, and apparently he became the first NFL receiver to have 10 years of his career guaranteed. And that was the big thing from this contract that I saw that kind of shocked me was it was a $110 million contract over 4 years. $82.5 million, I think, was guaranteed. That's a bigger percentage of guarantees, and I think maybe the biggest guaranteed of all these wide receivers that have signed in that area. So that's probably something that Brandon Aiyuk likes to see. Brandon Aiyuk probably recognizing, look, well, there's for sure no way you guys can pay me less than 27.5 now. And look, this guy got 80% of his contract guaranteed too. So, okay, well, maybe let's talk about $28.5 million for me, but let's do 80% of my contract guaranteed then.
If the 49ers truly came in at 26, that's the last number that we know. And again, he confirmed this by going on the podcast, The Pivot, and was like, these real numbers have been floating around. And he's like, how are people knowing about these numbers? How are they getting it? Obviously, it's the 49ers letting people know. And the media is putting it out there, right? So he's like, they're playing the game through the media. I'm going to do the same thing. So the last number that we heard, $26 million. If the 49ers are not willing to move off, and I'll ask this question for people who are, either listening, you guys can answer on Apple and in the comments there. If you're on YouTube, whatever, Twitter, you guys know where to find us. If you were Brandon Aiyuk, would you take less than what DJ Moore just got? Or would you at the very least settle for the same exact contract? If the 49ers if you're Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers came at you tomorrow and said, hey, these are your guaranteed numbers, the same as DJ Moore. These are your totals, same as DJ Moore, 27.5 per year, same as DJ Moore. Would you do it? But right now, the last number we hear is 26, and I bet the guarantees aren't as high. So the 49ers still, the longer this goes on, I think the harder it is for them to get something done. They still have the leverage, but it's just tough because now it's going to start coming off as, well, you're kind of not doing right by your player.
26 doesn't get it done. I could understand in February if the first offer they made was 26 million. That makes sense. Right now, it makes no sense at all. You definitely can't offer less than DJ Moore got. DJ Moore got guarantees on top of it, which were more than Amon-Ra St. Brown's guarantees, even though he got more per year. And Yeah, so it still feels like 28.5 is a good number. That's the number I thought it was going to be a couple weeks ago when Brandon Aiyuk requested the trade and then showed up holding in at camp. I thought, man, this is going to get done. And it's still not done. It's like, how do they not figure out that number? I feel like they're right there. 28.5. The guarantees, though, now is an interesting one. So we'll find out. I don't know. I don't know if it doesn't feel like the Trent Williams contract is imminent at all. I don't know what to expect about that contract, and I didn't expect the holdout either. So, and there's a pretty, I think it's 28 million is what Penei Sewell got, and I'm sure that's what Trent Williams wants.
Someone else just got paid too. Another offensive tackle, young guy,
recently.
Yeah, like a few days ago. Definitely didn't help the cause with this whole situation.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure Trent Williams was like, I'm better than that, dude. Who was it? Gosh, offensive tackle just got paid.
To be honest with you, I don't think Trent Williams cares unless he got paid the most.
Darrisaw, there we go. Everybody put in there. Darrisaw.
Yeah. Darrisaw was up for a big contract too. Yeah, and he's one of the
he's up for a big contract. But if you're Trent Williams, it's like, why are these guys making more than me?
It's a good point from Ian. Trent Williams gets so many days off, it barely matters. That's what I was talking about with camp. Like, I don't think it's necessarily something that he has to be in tomorrow. So the 49ers can probably wait on that and see, like, okay, Trent, how many fines do you want to rack up? So BA is the important contract, and they've been working on it for a long time. Are they still talking? Are they close? I have no idea. But as far as the DAP goes, to me, and like, you didn't finish your thought on that. You were breaking up, Croc. I thought it looked way more congratulatory than anything else. And if it was a trade, we'd already know about it. So I don't think it's a trade at all.
It looked a little awkward with the John Lynch one. It was like he kind of just walked from hecka far away, sees John Lynch. John Lynch is like playing catch with Shanahan, and then John Lynch sees him and is like, oh, Aiyuk, hey, how you doing? It was.
Well, it's like when someone walks into the conversation while you're talking about him. Is that the vibe you got?
Hey, how you doing? But the handshake between Aiyuk and Shanahan looked more natural. It didn't look forced at all. It looked like Kyle was genuinely happy to see him. Now, why was he happy to see him? Like, I think that's the question that we all want to know. And maybe it is more. But my question is, like, why did you walk from 50 yards away to go shake their hand? Did you not want it to be awkward? Did your agent tell you to do that? Or is something going down? And by going down, I mean, is he getting DJ Moore money? And if there was something he was getting ready to sign, and then DJ Moore signed that, do you still go with it? I looked up some of DJ Moore's numbers from last year. Brandon Aiyuk had 1342 yards, right? DJ Moore had 1364. So 22 more yards for DJ Moore than Brandon Aiyuk on 31 more targets. So it just goes to show you how efficient Aiyuk was. Better quarterback play, 49ers have. But
Ayuk's not asking for DJ money, but he is asking for more money. Let's
I like how you did that.
All right. Next, I want to talk cornerbacks. Deommodore Lenoir making plays at camp when we were there, and had an interesting quote about Brandon Staley, a genius coach for the San Francisco 49ers, and some notes on the rest of the cornerback group, which is looking strong as well. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We love sports, and we love them so much we never want them to stop. And, playoffs winded down in the NBA and the NHL, and sometimes it goes into a lull, the sports world does, near the all-star break of Major League Baseball. But now we've had the trade deadline, and now there's baseball back, and it's every single day, and you got the Olympics now. And, of course, all you got to do is dream up any bets you want and open up the FanDuel app and bet on the 2024 NFL season. Tons of props, tons of ways you can bet on NFL football. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
Peacock, we got a comment here in the chat from Dr. Steve Brule, and he says you get playoff game checks. You don't get paid for practice. Crazy thing about playoffs, you don't make much money in the playoffs. Now, if you win the whole thing, then it ends up being a decent amount, but not for what Aiyuk is getting paid, not for what Trent Williams is getting paid. I mean, it might be an extra 200,000. Now for us, and that's winning it all. It's like an extra like 200,000, something along the lines of that. Like the first playoff game, I think if you win, you get 22,000 off of that. So it's in a sense of like it moving the players. The playoffs is like that's more for bragging rights than it is like, you know, in the sense of like how much money you're like getting over the duration of your contract, your actual contract. Like they want that money because the playoff money is, you know, it's probably just going to go to a vacation.
You know what, about the offensive line and Trent Williams, and look, the 49ers got to get Trent Williams back, and, you know, obviously it screws up depth and everything else, even behind Jalen Moore, even if you're okay with Moore playing some games across from Colton McKivitz. But the doctor says one of the best things that happened to the team all season is Burford breaking his hand, and opens the door for Pooney to play right guard with potentially Feliciano at center. Do you think that's the best five the 49ers would have, with Feliciano better than Brendel at center, with Pooney owning the right guard job? Because Rick Torres says conspiracy theory is that they want Pooney to replace Banks next year and hope Burford works out at right tackle due to future cap constraints. And I've talked about the Pooney to replace Banks thing, and I think that was the thought during the draft. But these injuries have opened the door for Pooney at right guard. And if Pooney's looking like the part, I think he should play at right guard, and then you let the best man win at center. I think that's the way it should go. And I would like to see Burford at right tackle. I would. He was a college tackle, and if he's not amazing at guard, and, you know, make him more valuable as a backup, even if he's not a starting tackle, get him some reps at tackle. Maybe he's better than Jalen Moore at left tackle.
I think the 49ers want to suit up the best possible five offensive linemen they can. And if they're trying to put the best five on the field, I would assume that that does not include Spencer Burford. And I think that they would truly want Aaron Banks on the field. Like when Aaron Banks played very well, which he did the year before, last year he dealt with a lot of injuries. You know, you get in that version and he's healthier, which right now, you know, hasn't started off all that great as far as health goes. That's probably your best five. Like I think it includes Aaron Banks. So I don't know if they're looking past this year. I think for the 49ers, especially with where they're at, Kyle Shanahan, if you ask him as well, hey, we want Aaron Banks to be the best version of himself. We want, Feliciano be the best version of himself. If that's at center, cool. And Dominic Pooney, if you're out there, because I think if they want to replace anybody, it is that right guard. If it has to be Spencer Burford, like they want to replace that. So I think Banks, I don't know if he's looked at as, oh, we don't want him out there, and we actually.
I think the Banks thing that Rick is talking about is for next year. I think clearly Banks is locked in as one of the best five in the left guard this year, but he's in the final year of his contract, and you can't start paying guards, whatever, $15-20 million. I don't know what. If Aaron Banks has a really good season, he's making a lot of money. Guards are starting to make a lot of money. Niners, I mean, that's the problem right now. Is like everybody wants money. And everyone wants top of the market money. And even when you get a guy paid and you think, all right, cool, we got a running back, we got a tackle. It's like, nope, I want number one in the league at my position money for McCaffrey. Like, all right, do it. Trent Williams like, nope, never mind. I want number one in the league money at my position. And so it starts to get very difficult. And if you're doing those things, you for sure can't start paying a guard top of the league money.
It's even more difficult when you're winning a lot of games. And that's what the 49ers are. I think I heard one of the players talk about how it's kind of a good problem to have, because that means that everybody's playing so well. And right now, if you had to give like a defensive MVP of camp, it might be Deommodore Lenoir. Well, who's up for contract next year? We're talking about Aaron Banks. What about Demo? And right now, he's looking like maybe your best defensive back. You're muted.
Sorry, I'm muted there. No, great transition into Deommodore Lenoir, because Lenoir, fantastic day camp, and we were there. He's had a really good camp. Charvarius Ward also up for a new contract. They got to probably sign one of those guys, but probably not two of those guys. But Deommodore Lenoir had said something very interesting at camp this week, and he said that Brandon Staley was, quote, a genius, and that it's like, quote, having another Kyle, but on defense. That's some pretty phenomenal praise for the 49ers' new defensive coach. And by the way, those coaches were at the defense coaches were on the podium on Wednesday, and Nick Sorensen's going to be calling plays from the field, and it looks like Brandon Staley's going to be helping out from the booth on game days. So that's the way that's going to be structured. But what do you think? A true genius now on defense in new coach Brandon Staley, which I still forgot what his official title is. I don't know if they ever said what his title is.
I think he might be assistant head coach. We'll have to look that up. But
I think that is, and then no specific title beyond that, right? Assistant head coach defense or something like that, I think is what it was.
I think you said it best when we initially spoke about this. There's some people that are head coaches and some people that are not. And I think he's just not a head coach. Like, that is what it comes down to. That's what we've seen. Staley is not a head coach. But that doesn't mean that you're not a terrific mastermind when it comes to understanding football and how things work, X's and O's. If I remember correctly, this is a guy who coached the offensive side of the ball or played on the offensive side of the ball. Like, he might have been like a quarterback or something. He transitioned to the defensive side of the ball. So he truly understands both sides of the ball, how things work, how they work hand in hand. And as a defensive mind, he is really good. And I think that the 49ers are reaping the benefits of having somebody like him in-house. Listen, there's been a lot of different things that Kyle Shanahan has really done, but I think surrounding himself and being a really good scout for coaches. And I know the Wilkes one didn't quite work out, right? But it wasn't completely just off the train tracks. I mean, that was a guy, like, the defense still, for the most part, like, performed well. Like, they're still top of the league in a lot of different categories, just not quite to what we have expected them to be year in and year out. I think, when you add Sorensen, you add Staley, and you have them in the mix, I think, again, finding guys that are going to understand what it is that you want them to do, be able to speak that language, and be able to give that to the players. So Staley, a lot of people kind of scoffed at the hiring initially because of what LA ended up being a joke, especially with the quarterback he had, and had some talent there. A lot of injuries that he had to deal with during that time, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But I don't think that diminishes the type of defensive mind that he is. I think he just maybe had too much on his plate trying to handle everything as a head coach.
Renardo Green, good news there. He was not at practice Tuesday. He was back at practice on Wednesday, so there wasn't, a major injury or anything like that. Isaac Yiadom wearing number 22 for the 49ers. Both those guys built very similarly. I think they're just a hair under 6 feet, skinny, but physical and scrappy on top of it. And I really like the way that both those guys have played, the little that I've seen of Renardo Green. But I love the competition, and I believe they were mic'd up, or at least Juwan Jennings was mic'd up going at it on Monday with Renardo Green, and that was fun to watch, to see a rookie kind of going at a guy who's a tough guy on the team. And I think Juwan Jennings got the better of him that day. But I love the scrappiness from those guys, and so we'll see what Renardo Green ends up being. But the mindset's there. I think we've seen it from Ricky Pearsall. We've seen it from Pooney. Those guys are high character, older players, 24-year-old rookies that came in, with high floors for the 49ers. So I think mostly good returns on those early draft picks for the 49ers, Malik Mustafa as well. By the way, New York Giants draft board, or a color coding of their draft board, was leaked on the Hard Knocks, and 49ers rookie safety Malik Mustafa had a blue designation, which only a handful of guys had for the New York Giants, which apparently is a high character player, kind of similar to how the 49ers do the gold helmet thing. And Malik Mustafa had that rating, that grade from the New York Giants. And so, that's, high praise for a team that you only give out a few of those grades per year, guys that are super high character people that you want to try to bring into your organization. And the Niners got one of those guys, at least, that was graded that way by the New York Giants. The 49ers didn't tell us this year who had the gold helmets, but I wonder if he was a gold helmet guy for them too. So, early returns were good on the 49ers draft class. And another note on the corners.
Real quick, a class that we were expecting to have a little bit more impact next year. But right now it seems like guys are kind of getting some opportunities due to some, whether it's injuries or, whatnot.
Yep. Shout out to our guy Barnaby, who we saw at training camp says, you guys surprised that Charvarius Ward didn't make the NFL's top 100? NFL players don't respect his game. To be honest with you, I don't care about those lists. I don't pay attention to them at all. I know fans get mad at them. You do kind of at least notice when it's, when those lists that come out where it's the GMs and the coaches ranking them. I take those a little bit more to heart. I think players are really bad rating each other. So I think it's as bad if players rate each other than it is when fans rate players, or when, just whatever media person or entity rates players. So mostly these lists I don't pay attention to at all. And I wouldn't even have noticed that he wasn't graded there. I'm sure he noticed it, but I don't care about those things, Croc. I don't know if those things hit with you at all.
No, they don't at all. And I think with those things, you kind of look to see what aligns with how you feel about something, right? Like I saw Deebo Samuel came in at like 31 or 30, but Brandon Aiyuk came in at 66, right? And it's like, is there a gap like that between these two guys? Do the players not respect them? I don't even know how they vote on this whole thing. I saw Brock Purdy. You see Brock Purdy at 28. People like, see, everybody respects him. And then you kind of show like, hey, they had Jimmy Garoppolo at 45. And it's like, but he wasn't good. It's like, so I don't know how they go about it, but I don't pay any attention to the top 100 list.
One thing I do know, the 49ers look to have a very deep cornerback class when you throw in a second-round rookie in Renardo Green. I like Isaac Yiadom. I know he's on a short-term contract, but he looked good out there. Rocky Sin wearing, 33, right? Was Rocky Sin? He looked okay there.
Looked thicker too, huh?
He looked big, yeah. He looked so much thicker than Yiadom, for sure.
Definitely.
And obviously we know Charvarius Ward is awesome. Deommodore Lenoir is really coming to his own as a player. He's phenomenal outside in. I think it's the best way to use him. He can play both outside and in the nickel. Phenomenal group of and deep group of cornerbacks for the 49ers we're seeing out there.
I think for a team that's kind of been thirsty for a shutdown corner, may not have that, but definitely have terrific corners and maybe some of the most depth that they've had since I think the 2020 season. I know a lot of guys got hurt that year, but heading into the season with Emmanuel Mosley, Richard Sherman, Jason Verrett, Keller Witherspoon, I thought that was a pretty deep room. This room seems to be maybe even deeper than that.
Yeah, Ambry Thomas, for sure. Samuel Womack, right? This is a very deep group. And, who knows? Maybe even guys approaching not necessarily shutdown level, but Ward and Lenoir are really good and probably underrated around the NFL with how good they are. Uncle Shaggy, by the way, says, greeting from Monterey Bay. I went from 49ers training camp to Monterey Bay, took my son Leo to the Monterey Bay Aquarium today. So I'm in Monterey Bay as well. So shout out to Uncle Shaggy. Shout out to all the listeners wherever you are. We appreciate you. All the everydayers out there, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Drop a message to us while you're there. And make sure you're subscribed on not only YouTube, but everywhere you listen to the audio version of this podcast as well. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.